Imagine walking into a dark, cold basement in France over 300 years ago. You hear a sound like a gunshot, then another, then another. You are not in a war, you are in a wine cellar. And the gunshots you are hearing are actually glass bottles exploding on their own, one after another like popcorn. Workers down there wore thick iron masks over their faces, not to look cool, to stop flying glass from blinding them or cutting their throats open. In some cellars, on the worst nights, up to 9 out of every 10 bottles would explode before morning. The wine that caused all this chaos is the same wine that rich people today pop open at weddings and birthdays and New Year parties. Champagne. But here's the twist nobody tells you. Champagne was not invented on purpose. It was a mistake. A mistake so dangerous and so unpredictable that French winemakers did not call it a miracle drink. They called it the devil's wine. Today we are going to find out how a terrifying winemaking disaster turned into the most famous celebration drink on earth. Let us get into it. To understand this story, you need to understand one thing. The Champagne region in France is cold. It is actually one of the coldest wine growing regions in the world. And back in the 1600s, that cold weather created a huge problem for winemakers. Here's how wine normally works. You crush grapes and yeast eats the sugar inside the grape juice. As the yeast eats the sugar, it creates alcohol. This process is called fermentation. It is basically controlled rotting, but the good kind. Fermentation needs warmth to keep going, but in Champagne, winter would arrive fast and hard. The temperature would drop and the yeast would basically fall asleep. Fermentation would stop halfway through before all the sugar turned into alcohol. The winemakers did not know this was happening. They thought the wine was finished, so they sealed it up in bottles and stored it away for the winter. Then spring would come, the cellars would warm up again, and guess what woke up too? The sleeping yeast. It started eating sugar again right there inside the sealed bottle. And fermentation does not just make alcohol, it also makes carbon dioxide gas. Normally that gas just escapes into the air, but this wine was trapped sealed inside glass with nowhere for the gas to go. The pressure kept building and building until boom, bottles were not just popping their corks, they were shattering completely with glass shards flying through cellars like tiny bombs going off. And this was not a one-time accident. It happened almost every single spring like clockwork. Winemakers started calling it the second fermentation, but they had a much scarier nickname for the wine itself. They called it le vin du diable, the devil's wine. Because think about it from their point of view, this wine seemed cursed. It would sit quietly all winter pretending to be normal wine. Then out of nowhere, it would come alive and try to hurt you. Cellar workers actually wore heavy iron masks similar to something a blacksmith might wear just to walk safely through their own basements. Some workers lost eyes, some lost fingers. Entire cellars would lose anywhere from 20% to 90% of their bottles in a single bad year. Imagine spending months growing grapes and making wine only to lose almost everything to random explosions. That is not annoying. That is a full-blown disaster. It nearly destroyed the wine business in the entire region. So naturally, winemakers in Champagne did not want any of this. They saw the bubbles as a defect, a flaw, something to be fixed and not celebrated. This is where a famous name enters the story. Dom Pérignon. You have probably seen this name on a very expensive champagne bottle before. A lot of people say Dom Pérignon invented champagne. That is actually not true. And the real story is way more interesting than that. Dom Pérignon was a real monk who lived in the late 1600s. He worked at an abbey in the Champagne region, and one of his jobs was managing the wine. Here is the twist. Dom Pérignon was not trying to make bubbly wine. He was trying to get rid of the bubbles completely. To him and to almost everyone at the time, bubbles meant the wine was broken and ruined. He spent years experimenting trying to create a stronger and calmer wine that would not randomly fizz up and explode on people. He did make huge improvements to winemaking in the region, like better grape selection and better blending and stronger glass and better corks. But the bubbles themselves he never fully got rid of. The wild part is that some of his fixes accidentally made the bottles hold pressure even better, which meant even more explosions and not less. So the man history credits with inventing champagne actually spent his life trying to destroy the exact thing that made champagne famous today. While the French were fighting to kill the bubbles, something unexpected was happening across the ocean in England. French champagne wine was being shipped there as a normal flat still still wine. But English merchants started doing something different. They started adding extra sugar to the wine and bottling it in stronger English glass that could handle way more pressure. They were not scared of the fizz at all. They actually liked it. Records suggest English drinkers were enjoying sparkling wine on purpose decades before the French officially accepted it. While French winemakers were still cursing the devil's wine, English aristocrats were already popping bubbly bottles at parties on purpose. Eventually, the French wine industry could not ignore what was happening anymore. Sparkling champagne was becoming popular and valuable, and impossible to stop. So instead of fighting the bubbles, winemakers slowly started working with them. They figured out stronger bottle designs, better corks tied down with wire cages, which is actually why champagne corks still have wire cages today. It is not decoration, it is there to stop the cork from launching off from the pressure inside. They developed a technique called riddling, which meant slowly turning bottles upside down over time to collect the dead yeast at the neck, so it could be removed cleanly without losing the wine. What was once a terrifying accident slowly became a precise and controlled science that wineries still use today. So somewhere between exploding cellars and iron masks and a monk trying to destroy bubbles and English drinkers who never got the memo that this wine was supposed to be a failure, champagne was born. It was not invented in one clean moment. It was built slowly out of a mistake that nobody actually wanted in the first place. Today, champagne can only legally be called champagne if it comes from that exact region in France, using that exact method. It is one of the most protected names in the entire food and drink world. Winemakers anywhere else in the world can make the exact same style of sparkling wine, but they are legally banned from ever calling it champagne. And every single time someone pops a bottle at a wedding or a birthday or on New Year's Eve, they are really celebrating with a 300-year-old accident, a wine that was once so dangerous that workers needed armor just to survive their own job. The devil's wine slowly became the drink of celebration, and today it sits on ice at the fanciest parties on the planet. If you enjoyed learning something wild and true, today hit that like button because it genuinely helps this channel grow. And if you want more stories like this, real history and weird accidents and secrets nobody teaches you in school, make sure you are subscribed because there is a lot more coming very soon. See you in the next one.